One, and we have got the July 4th crew together here. We are the technology wizards. We are the people that make it happen. How is everybody doing this morning?
Good.
Fantastic, Kelly.
Oh, I love how loud you are, Tom.
I love your intros. I love how you have a game mode, like you just go game mode. We can just
Yep.
be having a conversation, you just go into game mode.
Just get me the puck in front of the net and I'll whiff on it. That's what I say.
You've always been known to the guy that stay at the high slots. You're not a corner guy. You just float top the circles and say, feed
Well,
me.
come on, Tom. You've played with me. You know I'm too small for that. I'm the guy who gets the puck and puts it away. I can't get it. Emily, tell us a little bit about how long you've been in consulting or technology consulting and recruiting. We've got a tough market out there for some people, and we're hearing from consultants. How long have you been in the business, and have you seen this before?
I've been doing this 25 years.
Have you seen a soft spot like we've seen over the last 3 or 4 months?
Not really, no. I mean, it's kind of the number one question we're getting right now, from candidates and clients, trying to get a pulse on the market. And I would say it's a roller coaster right now, right? So I feel like it's ever changing, but very much optimistic that we're kind of getting to this point of stability. And even with the chaotic market, I feel like there's been opportunity in growth, which has been great, right? So I think right now with clients, they're focused on, kind of getting back to what was before COVID, right? So they're working on trying to get a more hybrid model, figuring out, what portion of that will be remote, really looking at budgets and building out teams. So there's been a lot of changes with that. But again, there's been growth at clients as well. It's definitely competitive in the market from a client and candidate perspective. So I think we have more people starting to look, whether they're unfortunately impacted by the reduction in workforce or just, being more proactive in their search. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think it's a good thing. And to answer your question, no, I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this, but it's changed and it's good. So
What can people do to be competitive? You mentioned a couple of items that are always top of the list for people. Remote work, we're coming out of 2 years of people being used to work from home. What do you recommend to people who say, "Hey, I do really need to work"?
yep. I think a couple pieces of advice that we give is be flexible, right? So I think those individuals that are open to a hybrid model or not just so focused on remote, also flexible in the job, right? So I know individuals want a certain job or skill set, but being flexible in this market, I think is going to get you a position faster, as well as making sure that you're staying marketable. So ensuring that your skills are up to date, right? So even though you're at a client and you're working, getting a pulse on what skills and what trends are out there are going to help you land that next opportunity or stay competitive in the market. And then just network. I think it's super important. We have platforms like LinkedIn and user groups, et cetera. And I think people have been so comfortable with doing that digital networking, but getting back to in person as well. I think LinkedIn is great to network and see what companies are hiring, get a pulse on trends, but also getting out and physically networking with individuals. Having people get to know you is key to getting that next opportunity. So it's all about who you know and building out those relationships. Even if you're not available right now, continuing to build those relationships just in case something does change.
Tom, you're the king of networking in a lot of ways. You're likable, you're humble, you know, I want to be around you, as much as possible to see if it rubs off. What are you doing these days with,
Seriously, I
you
just
hear,
love being on this show. I want to have this show every day so you can tell me that when I wake up. That's what we need to do, Kelly. So thank you for doing that. No, I actually think, I'm an empty nester, right? So my kids are in the job search. And so I actually ask Emily her advice when we're like, what should my kids do? And, because my kids don't listen to me necessarily, but I've always been a networker and I'm actually an introvert, but I love talking to people, understanding where they come from and what they do. And I think the challenging part and probably the question I have for Emily is if I'm looking for a job, as my kids are job searchers looking to make a transition, what stands out? Like, it's hard because you have a resume, right? And then, so you see a resume and you have to go deeper. Like, what's this about? So how do you how can someone stick out amongst the crowd, right? When you're just looking at resumes or LinkedIn, what do you look for? What using your experience, and what do you share with our team to look for?
Yep, I think it's important. Like when looking at resumes, one, I think that first page is so key, right? Whether it's a recruiter, hiring manager, that's it's kind of that 30-second rule, right? With respect to what's being looked at. So making sure that first page really sells what you did, not what you were a part of, right? So they're looking at, what was your responsibilities on the projects, and what deliverables were you part of. Again, also experience is super key, but then backing it up with any certifications, any participation in user groups, et cetera. Clients feel that shows that you had that initiative and are serious about, whether it's a project manager, scrum master, et cetera. So experience obviously is always going to supersede that certification, but backing it up with how you're active in that space, I think is separating individuals right now.
Anything a person can do to sell themselves or stick out amongst the crowd. I just think resumes are one thing, but then you got to bring the individual, the personality has got to be coming through, right? Through achievement or soft skills or leadership. So I think that's the thing that's just so hard to grab when you're out in this virtual world or of just looking at resumes. So how can someone stick out with those soft skills or something unique? Or what would you recommend they do?
I think that's where the whole, networking, comes into place, right? So I think it's all about connections and who you know, and in resumes, support kind of, that you are a person and kind of what you've done. But resume aside, words aside, who are you? And I think the biggest way to showcase that is, whether it's through a virtual coffee meeting or, putting yourself out there on LinkedIn to, connect and go to these user groups. Even during COVID, the user groups were still going on. They were just more virtual. So I think it's important to really connect and build those skill sets. And even, if you're not looking, do ask for an interview or be, proactive in that space because you're still building those connections. So I think resumes are great to, again, validate what you've done, who you are, but trying to get ahead of the line to answer your question is to, get out there and network and get noticed, right? And that's through, the user groups or, connecting on LinkedIn, trying to build out your own mini network because it is competitive, right? And it's all about how you can get noticed and again, validating that your skills are, up to date because in our industry, things are ever changing, right? So making sure that you do have those latest certifications and you do have kind of the skills that clients are looking for. And with this remote work right now, our hybrid, that communication and leadership and et cetera is that much more important, right? So
Yeah. I just think of networking as, I'm sorry, Kel, I think networking, and I do believe this, is if I could give anyone an advice, whether you're starting or mid-career or senior, networking is always has to be done, whether you're looking for a job or not. It's the foundation of success for us in the professional world, right? And as much as we might not want to do things, we want to spend time with our family, but going out, having a happy hour, attending events, it's so critical to your career growth and
right.
helping others, right? Because when you help others, I think they help you. And I think that's, oversimplified of what we do, but I do think that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talk a lot about building our brand, and I think people that's a great takeaway, right? So making sure that you're building your individual brand where people know you in the Minneapolis market, right? It's a big market, but it becomes smaller the more connected you are, and having that support and those connections will help. So I think just the networking is key. You never know when something might change at your current employer or when you need to rely on a connection. So I think it's kind of this part-time job, so to speak, but it's super important.
Last question for each of you. LinkedIn has become more and more spammy, salesy, it seems like. Is LinkedIn still a valuable spot to be for promoting your own brand and for networking? Emily, you go first.
Yep. Yeah, LinkedIn is key. I mean, it's kind of the premier platform, right, with respect to not only showcasing who you are, but it also has a lot of really good intel to see what companies are hiring, getting intel in the market and trends, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of value in not only just having a LinkedIn account, but being active on LinkedIn, right? So whether it's liking and sharing and commenting and really participating in this, digital world that's out there, I think is super important. It's kind of been kind of the go-to platform. Obviously, like we just mentioned, networking groups are super important as well because you get that personal connection. But being active on LinkedIn is still key. Yep.
Tom, anything to add to that?
Well, I think it's important. I like it for a separation of 3 degrees perspective, right? So who knows this person, and if this person have a good relationship, and if you trust them to help reach out. So I think it's a looking at that perspective, separation of 3 degrees. I still feel like the human element gets lost in our world, and I think, well, like this podcast, Kelly, we're trying to humanize ourselves. We're trying to show personalities, right? Because they would
Look at us. We're people. We're real.
they wouldn't know who we are. So I think video is so incredibly important, like this podcast, or if people wanted to kind of sell themselves, I would think like a video message on LinkedIn would be unbelievably awesome. But I think I like LinkedIn for a separation of 3 degrees perspective for me, but that's just the world I live in too.
Yeah. And this is a clarification. This is a vodcast.
Oh,
Vodcast.
Oh yeah. Right.
It's a little play on words I have there because, Tom Newman, Emily Fossey, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for your time. Have a wonderful 4th of July.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
you are listening to the Kelly Wendland Vodcast.